It was just after midnight when the rain began falling hard, soaking the asphalt of a long, empty highway that stretched through the edge of the national park. Most drivers wouldn't dare pass through at that hour, not in a storm like that. But Thomas didn't have a choice. He was on a long-haul drive transporting supplies to a remote animal rescue center. The road was lonely, carved between thick trees and deep brush, the only light coming from his truck's headlights cutting through sheets of rain. Thomas was no stranger to danger. A former wildlife medic turned logistics driver, he had spent years rescuing and treating wild animals across Africa. But nothing could prepare him for what he was about to see. As he turned a bend near kilometer marker 48, his headlights caught something that made him slam the brakes so hard the truck skidded on the slick road. His heart jumped. There, right in the middle of the highway, was a lion, a full-grown male lion, massive and soaking wet, lying still across the two-lane road. At first, Thomas thought it was dead. But as he stepped out of the truck, cautiously moving, closer with his flashlight, he saw it. Barely. A twitch. A slow, shallow rise in the lion's chest. It was breathing. "Oh my God," Thomas whispered, the cold wind pushing rain into his eyes. He knelt slowly just a few feet away, careful not to make sudden movements. The lion's body was trembling slightly. Its eyes were open but glazed. Its fur was matted and stained with something dark. Blood. Thomas scanned the area quickly. There were no other animals, no vehicles around. Maybe it had been hit by a speeding car. Or maybe it had dragged itself here from the wild trying to find help. He could have walked away, called someone, driven off. But he didn't. Instead, he opened the back of his truck and grabbed what he had: 2 large blankets, a headlamp, an emergency medical kit, and a tranquilizer pen he always carried for worst-case situations. As he approached, again he spoke softly. "Hey there, big guy, I'm not here to hurt you, I promise." The lion didn't move, but it also didn't attack. Thomas moved in closer, heart pounding. It was a young adult male, maybe 4 or 5 years old. Its back leg was twisted unnaturally, likely broken. There were long gashes down its side. Claw marks? No, too deep. Maybe barbed wire, and worst of all, the lion's breathing was labored, wheezing with every breath. Internal bleeding, maybe. The poor creature didn't have long. The rain kept falling. Thomas knew if he didn't move fast, the lion wouldn't survive the night. He did the only thing he could. He knelt beside the massive animal and carefully injected a sedative into its shoulder. The lion flinched but didn't fight. Within seconds, its body relaxed deeper. It was unconscious, but alive. Now came the hard part. He grabbed one of the blankets, spread it over the lion to keep it warm, then radioed the local wildlife response station. No answer. The storm had knocked out the towers. Thomas cursed under his breath, looking around at the empty road. He was completely alone. It would take hours to drive back to the ranger base. By then, the lion might bleed out. He made a decision no one else would dare make. He was going to lift a full-grown lion into the back of his truck. Alone. He grabbed a tow strap from under the truck bed and wrapped it under the lion's chest, then another beneath the hips. Using a combination of brute strength and the help of a foldable ramp, he dragged the sedated animal inch by inch toward the tailgate. His boots slid on the wet road. His muscles screamed, but he didn't stop. Finally, after what felt like forever, the lion lay in the bed of the truck, wrapped in blankets, secured in place. Thomas climbed in, soaked to the bone, blood on his hands that wasn't his own. He looked at the great beast and whispered, "You stay with me. You hear me? You don't get to give up tonight." Then he started the engine and drove. The storm howled around him. Trees swayed. The highway vanished into darkness. But he drove, gripping the wheel, eyes scanning the mirrors to make sure the lion didn't stir too soon. Time crawled. Every bump in the road felt like a threat. Every minute that passed was one closer to losing the animal. At one point, he thought the lion had stopped breathing. He pulled over, jumped into the back, checked its chest, still rising. Barely. He adjusted its position and covered it with another layer of cloth. When he finally reached the rescue center's gates, the sky was lightening into a pale gray. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle. Exhausted, Thomas honked twice and waited. Moments later, Dr. Karen, head veterinarian and an old friend, burst out of the building with her team, confused and worried. Then she saw the lion in the truck. "Bed, what the hell happened?" she asked, her voice caught between shock and awe. Thomas just pointed back at the road. "I found him. In the middle of the highway. He's hurt bad." They didn't waste another second. The team moved quickly, placing an oxygen mask on the lion's face, checking vitals and wheeling him into the trauma room. Thomas followed, wet clothes sticking to his skin, not realizing how tired he was until his knees almost gave out. He leaned against the wall, eyes on the lion. Hours passed. Surgery was performed, blood was transfused, bones were reset. And finally, just before noon, Dr. Karen walked over and sat beside Thomas. "He made it," she said gently. "He's sleeping now. We're not out of the woods yet, but he has a real shot." Thomas didn't speak for a long moment. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, there was something in his eyes, even when he was down. Like he didn't want to die out there. Like he was asking for help. Dr. Karen nodded. "And you answered." As they sat in silence, the lion rested peacefully behind the glass. And though the story was far from over, something had already changed. Because out there in the rain on a forgotten stretch of road, one man did something most would never even try. He stopped. He saved. And what happened next would shake the world. 3 days passed. The lion, now resting in a quiet recovery pen at the Animal Rescue Center, remained weak but stable. The center had named him Ka'ari, which meant strength in the local dialect. It felt fitting. Thomas visited every morning and every evening, sitting just beyond the barrier as Kari slept. The other staff watched from a distance. Most people didn't get that close to a wild lion, but Kari never growled, never bared his teeth. His eyes followed Thomas when he came in, calm, as if he remembered. "Did you see the way he looks at you?" Dr. Karen asked one evening. Thomas nodded. "It's strange. Like there's a connection." Karen sighed. "You saved him, Tom. That kind of bond runs deep in the wild." Kari's injuries were healing slowly, but something else troubled Karen. Deep scars along his back and legs, signs of old abuse. It wasn't just a car hit that brought him down. He had been through something else. Something darker. Then the news came. The park authorities released a report. A poaching ring had been spotted near the outer edges of the reserve. They weren't just hunting lions. They were capturing them alive, smuggling them across borders. Some were sold. Others forced into illegal fighting rings. Kari had likely escaped. Thomas clenched his fists when he heard. "No wonder he collapsed on the road," he muttered. He was running for his life. That night, Thomas didn't go home. He stayed at the center, watching Kari breathe under the soft red glow of the heat lamps. Something had shifted inside him. He wasn't just trying to save a lion anymore. He was protecting a soul that had been broken and left for dead. But then, just as Kari started walking again, slowly limping across the pen with strength returning to his legs, trouble found them. 3 men showed up at the center's gates. They claimed to be from the wildlife department, flashing fake ID cards and saying they needed to take the lion for rehabilitation transfer. Karen saw through it instantly, but before they could stall the men long enough, Thomas had already seen the glint of a weapon under one of their jackets. "They're not here for help," he whispered. "They came to finish the job." He didn't wait. With adrenaline roaring in his veins, Thomas ran straight into the back pen and opened Kari's enclosure. The lion looked at him, confused. "I need you to trust me," Thomas whispered. "We're getting you out of here." Kari didn't move at first, but when Thomas reached out, placing a hand near his shoulder, something clicked. The lion stepped forward, slowly, carefully. Thomas led him through the back gate, out into the dense trees behind the facility, a hidden trail only staff used. Behind them, shouting broke out. Karen had hit the alarm. Security lights flooded the area. But the men had already broken through the front. The chase was on. Rain began falling again. Light this time, but cold. Thomas and Kari moved through the dark, the man guiding the lion like an old friend. Branches cracked behind them. Flashlights bobbed. Voices yelled. "You're not taking him," Thomas muttered under his breath. Not after all this. They reached the edge of a narrow riverbed. On the other side, protected forest. Deeper reserve territory. A place where poachers wouldn't dare enter without risking a full military response. But the river had swelled from the recent rains. Thomas looked at Kari, who growled softly, as if sensing what needed to happen. "There's no other way," Thomas said. Without another word, the lion stepped into the cold current. Thomas followed. The water was waist-deep, slippery, fast. Thomas nearly fell twice, gripping onto a large branch while Kari pushed forward with raw strength. Behind them, the shouting grew louder. Just before they reached the other side, a gunshot echoed. Thomas dropped. Kari spun, roaring, loud, thunderous, the sound shaking the trees. But the bullet hadn't hit Thomas. It had struck the water, near his leg, close but not deadly. They scrambled up the muddy bank. Thomas crawled. Kari turned once, let out one last roar that sent even the bravest of the pursuers stumbling backward, then disappeared with Thomas into the trees. For hours, they hid in silence. Finally, as dawn broke, a rescue team arrived by chopper. Karen had sent for help the moment the poachers entered the grounds. The men were arrested, the illegal ring exposed. Kari was safe. And Thomas? He became a legend. Weeks passed. Kari made a full recovery and was moved to a protected reserve where no hunting, no contact, and no cameras were allowed. He had space to roam freely, to live as he was always meant to. Thomas visited once before saying goodbye. He stood at the observation post watching Kari from a distance as he walked across. The plains with 3 lionesses now beside him. A pride had accepted him, scarred but strong. Thomas smiled. As he turned to leave, Kari paused, looked toward him. Their eyes met. And in that one look, something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, memory, and something deeper. Something like love. Thomas raised a hand in farewell. Kari let out a soft, low rumble, then turned and vanished into the golden grass. Sometimes life gives you a moment that changes everything. A moment when you're called to act, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Thomas answered that call in the middle of a rainy highway. He saved a lion that night, but in many ways, the lion saved him too. If you felt something during this story, if it touched your heart or made you see animals in a new light, consider subscribing, giving a like, or sharing this story with someone who believes in second chances. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. The world needs more people like Thomas, and more souls like Kari, willing to fight their way back to freedom. Until next time, stay kind, stay wild, and never ignore a soul lying alone in the road.